So you know, if you hire a hitman to kill you, he more than likely will take the chances, and he will and he would. Something you shouldn't do. Like, subscribe, ID in the Discovery Channel. Yes, ID in the Discovery Channel. The links are provided below. Get that Discovery Go app as well as that ID Go app. You might want to get those two things. Make them into one. The cute chick up above that died by ways of hands of her hitman. One she in fact hired through Craigslist, right? That's a poor decision. I'm saying that's a mental illness decision. To hire somebody to kill you, right, is to say there must in fact be issues involved. Love to her family, though. He in fact killed her because that's what she wanted. That's a weakness. That's almost like a grown man, despite him being young, right? Preying on a teen's weakness, because she in fact was a teenager, right? So yeah, a teen hires a hitman, not a hitman, but she considers him to be one, right? That's what she was in fact looking for, as in vocalizing one to be, right? Seeking out, sought out, right? Hires a man on Craigslist to kill her, which leads to him facing 48 years. So Joseph Lopez, 23, entered into a plea agreement with prosecutors. He pled guilty to second-degree murder in the death of 19-year-old Natalie Bollinger, in which she received a single gunshot wound to the head a year ago, December 29, 2017. She hired him as a hitman, and I said that already. She hired him again as a hitman to kill her. He claimed to shoot her after taking her up on her offer via a response. When it comes to her ad, where it was placed, it was in fact placed in the single section of Craigslist. And it was titled, "I want to put a hit on myself." You see what I'm saying about the mental illness aspect? That her ad placed in that single section of Craigslist was titled with, "I want to put a hit on myself." That has mental illness spread all through it. As in the suicidal tendencies is what I'm trying to say, right? So, statement from Adams County District Attorney's Office. It said officials never confirmed the teen's ad existed. Law enforcement and all the rest never confirmed whether the teen's ad existed in Craigslist, right? But law enforcement takes the case serious in saying that Lopez didn't respond to her as a human the way he should have. He in fact responded to her as a predator. That's why he has to in fact face 48 years. Because once again, the signs was there, as there was in fact weakness. Something was wrong. What he should have did was took her up on her offer in a way as responding enough to get her some help, instead of shooting her and killing her. There could be secrecy in that, as in finding ways to contact her family members or somebody. Holding her by the hand gently or something and taking her about her way, or carrying her off to some medical unit or somewhere. I was going to say 72-hour hold. My apologies with that. But something in place of shooting her. That's why he has to serve that 48 years, right? There's no way. Because see, for you to be a human and see a human and know that, okay, there's flaws there like me, and yet I might not have, I'm saying him, might not have mental illness, and yet you see the struggles is there. Is to possibly sit there and talk to her and ask her what's wrong. Shows the mindset of people that don't care. Who wouldn't sit and talk to her, that young individual being 19 years old, who wouldn't sit and talk to her and possibly hold her by the hand and love on her and offer her some support and say, well, what's wrong? What done made you, or what done dragged you through life enough for you to want to kill yourself, and not only that, hire somebody else to do it? Shows he got issues as well. So you kill somebody you don't know, right? At face to face encounter, and yet not really fully knowing them. Because a person that really care about somebody, just them being a human being, I see why law enforcement feel the way that they feel. Because when they said, well, he didn't respond as a human, he responded as a predator. Because even law enforcement knows somebody with common sense, skills, logic, and reasoning will say, well, I don't know her, and yet she hired me as a hitman. Let me see and gain understanding perspective of her mindset. Because either she could have been molested or being abused or something as a kid or something, and grew up and couldn't get over devastation, or could have a drug issue. And let me see just enough to find out. As in, read her out. Not read her rights, but possibly that too, face to face, while you're talking to her in place of killing her. That just seems about right. Shows once again something ain't right on his end. So Lopez, the perpetrator, he needs to be called that, right? He exchanged dozens of text messages with the teen victim before picking her up and killing her. Lopez, that male, pretended to be an experienced killer upon contact with the victim via text. He acted and pretended as if he was experienced enough to be a hitman. His plans he put together were to pick her up at her apartment on December 28th, 2017. And within the affidavit stated the teen wanted to be killed on her knees. She wanted to be killed. In the affidavit, it was stated that she wanted to be killed on her knees and executed from behind. Which is what, yeah. So Lopez also stated the teen provided him with the gun to kill her. Supposedly, yeah. She provided him with the gun to kill her. He said he tried to change her mind, but she told him to continue further with what she wanted, right? He claimed to have paused to prevent himself from shooting her. And supposedly there was a thing where he went to her apartment and all the rest, right? Keeping himself surrounded around her or by her, right? He told officers he and she prayed before he shot her. That's a bit much in itself, the gruesome matter. Standing there knowing blood is going to be everywhere, as in it splatters on walls and ceilings and all the rest, right? So, yeah, he told officers he prayed before he shot her with his eyes closed. He closed his eyes, right? That's what he said. He then left, but before he left, he grabbed her purse and the gun before exiting, which is too stated in the affidavit. She was a cute girl. She was. That's sad. So, investigation of her death has been showed by or expressed in all the rest by investigators that she showed the signs of suicidal thoughts in the past. As others stated she would have never ended her life, and she was positive over the future, and yet suicidal thoughts was there. That's the only advantage and the disadvantage about technology. You can do all type of things behind the backs of those that love and care for you without them even knowing it. Because to say others express she never would have ended her life, and yet her life was taken away, as to say, well, okay, well, where's the center, as in what sits in between those two? The people that's saying that and the individual that, yeah, killed her. There was a middle, and the middle more than likely is where she sat with mental issues, and yet didn't tell the family and all the rest the way that she felt. Many people with mental illness don't do that sort of thing. They just leave it behind closed doors and let feelings subside as they will, or come back and forth as they will, and then they just keep it or hold it within until a day strikes where they can't take it no more. And then a life is lost with that, either by their own hands or somebody else shooting and killing them upon request, right? Okay, so the teen was missing and reported missing days after receiving a protection order against a male she felt was harassing her. That's where stuff kind of falls off the wall. I'm saying because to not really know, let me leave that part right there. Let me repeat that. The teen was missing and reported missing days after receiving a protection order against a male she felt was harassing her. Right? That's the only problem in the story, what I just said about the missing aspect. Because to have a protection order against a male that she felt was harassing her is to ask the question, well, which male and why? Right? Could have been him. Could have been anybody. Especially when it said that law enforcement couldn't find or they couldn't verify that a ad was placed in Craigslist by her. So it's to ask once again, what male? Because if you're being harassed and all the rest, right, and then you got whatever you're missing and all, that just is too much. I allow you, the viewer, pick that one apart. Because if there's no ad, it's to say, well, where did this guy come from? Where did he come from, and how did he know her, and what was the reason for that sort of thing? Was he the individual, or was it a former lover or boyfriend harassing? Which led to her missing and being found in wooded area. Who don't know that, as in how to question things. As in it's been surrounded. My own end to theirs, as in the situation is off. Sounds off. Always does, right? So her body was found in the woods last year as autopsy expressed a lethal level of heroin was in her system during the time of her death. That's suicidal as well. And yet you still want to go back and point to the... I can teach you on this camera all levels of angles of how to question people in the science department of picking stuff apart. And people even without knowing them. Because to go back once again and ask about the protection order against a male she felt was harassing her, right? And then the missing and being reported missing with all that after all that was done, right? It's to say, well, how did the lethal level of heroin become found in her system during the time of her death? Wouldn't that sort of thing prevent her from walking fully? I'm saying, wouldn't she be stumbling out? Stuff like that frustrate me. Wouldn't that, the lethal levels of heroin being in her system, wouldn't she black out? I thought there was a high blackout rate of individuals blacking out based upon a overdosage or slight overdosage of heroin being in their system. I've seen videos and all the rest on YouTube and everywhere else in the news of people blacking out in their cars or walking down the street just blacking out randomly because of too much heroin in a system. Something about that don't sound right. So it's all the way off is what I'm trying to say. Because see, for a guy to shoot you, it's to say, well, how did you get all the way out to where he was? Or did they practice drugs together or what? See what I'm saying? Tying stuff together that's mismatched, that don't, two things that don't go together, and yet you're tying it, you're fusing it together as one to make sense of the situation, as in the ordeal, as in what could have happened and why. How is this male able to shoot and kill her, and yet she was that strung out on some heroin without her blacking out, and yet she was able to make her way various places or here and there with him, possibly by hand or could be carried, I don't know. Just enough for him to shoot her and kill her upon request by her, wanting him to do that to her, right? It's odd as it's off. Because that's the axe. Well, how long does drugs wear off in the body, such as heroin? How long does it take for heroin to wear off in the body once a person has provided themselves with a lethal dose of heroin? A female, 19 years old, right? And not only that, how stable would she be able to make herself around certain areas, even if it's avenues, walking down the street, getting in the car, riding with him, right? And not only that, was he seeing her as she was using? It don't make sense. That don't even make sense. Because all I can see is that to be that drug, once again, I keep going back to that, to be that drug is to know you might in fact have to be carried. It's a timing factor, I'm saying. I'm thinking if she was that drugged up right away in that manner, she would have blacked out somewhere. Unless he was consuming the heroin with her, a drug product or something. He was consuming it with her because it's timing in that. Does that or does that not make sense? And remember, once again, he was the one that shot and killed her. I keep saying that based upon her request. Just don't seem right. So she's around him, gets in the car with him, be around him, and then she dies by the hands of him, and yet it takes her a while to black out or something, right? I'm thinking, okay, wait a minute, she didn't black out or none of that. I'm trying to make sense of this because it just don't. I'm thinking, cause see, a lethal dose of anything will make anybody black out. Or could die on the spot, right? Is heroin, see, because people use heroin all type of ways. And I get the question too deeply, like, well, did he shoot her first and then inject her with some heroin or something? See what I'm saying? To make it seem like something. Because people set up all type of stuff and don't think that people gonna go behind that. To have a lethal dose of something is to say, well, how far can you get with that even in your walking? And I'm repeating again, and yet with a man that you're around and you said that somebody was harassing you, would he in fact shoot you and kill you and lie and say to law enforcement that you hired him as a hitman and maybe he was harassing you, right? You might not have said, and then maybe he injected you with the lethal dose to make it seem like you had more issues than maybe you did. So that just don't seem. Okay, moving on. So the investigation, I said that already. So let me turn this. I said about the body being found in the woods and the autopsy about the expression of the lethal dose of heroin. So her father was unhappy with the prosecutor's decisions of plea agreement. Her dad, family, and all the rest was unhappy with the prosecutor's decisions of the plea agreement. And the father went on to say about Lopez how he was displeased, how he felt Lopez took advantage of his daughter's life. Right? That's agreeable. They need to scope that out even more to find out who was in fact harassing her. Moving on. So mental health experts can help walk those who suffer through trials of life. People that have mental illness or mental issues or mental struggles and drug addiction, abuse, or addiction or abuse, or suffering from either one or the two, drug addiction or abuse, right? There's mental health experts for that. There, in fact, is, as well as hotlines. So, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, that number is 1-800-273-TALK. That's what that is. And I'm side-eyeing because it's off. She might not even have suicidal tendencies. She might have been murdered because she might not have wanted to be bothered with somebody that was harassing her, and they could have lied about there being an ad in the Craigslist. You don't know these sort of people. That's what I'm trying to say. So, we're on investigationdiscovery.com. The ID logo sits up in the far left hand corner. Live now is, in fact, People Magazine investigates. Recommended for you. Shouts out to Paula as well as Lieutenant Joe Kenda. To receive a description is to, in fact, scroll right within here, the context. You can add to favorites by clicking the plus sign. All of these, in fact, have descriptions, just so you know. To receive an audio-visual description is to click the play button. Add to watch later. Click the plus sign. Doesn't it feel like it was just Halloween? That's odd in itself. On last night, I need to have that printed on a t-shirt. That's odd in itself. On last night, sign in. Yes, this is in fact exclusive. Click that padlock. Gonna present your who you're subscribed with, provider, and all the rest to gain access to that sort of thing. You can come back on here and scroll through these as you like. Unlock series, same thing. ID Go original series, the same thing. Shows of all kinds and all likes. How's the genre? So, Crime Feed News. Crime Feed News, a click within here is to be directed, yes, on the outside to crimefeed.com. Full of all the latest, greatest, and tragedy. Casey Anthony and more. It's all type of crazy stuff happens in the world that can be found there. To receive a newsletter is, in fact, type your email address in and click next. So leave me a comment in the comment section, dear viewer, with that. Some things you don't even know what to make of situations, as in not knowing what to say. Sometimes I don't even know what to say. Even while sitting here having everything to say. Some things just don't look right. And the conclusion is what I'm trying to say. It just don't. So that's all to be said for now. Do you think there's more to this story? Or do you think he murdered her purposefully as in a harassment issue? Or do you think it was somebody else harassing her? Let me know in the comment section. It just isn't right. I'm sure law enforcement knows something is strange about that and less spectacular. So I think that's all to be said for now, and I'm gone.